Do you ever feel like you are lost in a maze of your own stuff? Like, do you have those drawers in your house where you open them up and stuff falls out? Or you go looking for something because you thought you knew where it was and you can't find it freaking anywhere?
I can't find it anywhere.
I am with you. I've had these situations throughout my life. And so today I want to chat about how decluttering has helped me with my grief journey and how I think that decluttering can help you as well. But it's not just about saying goodbye to concert tickets from high school and cleaning out that, drawer box of cables that I know you all have somewhere. Decluttering is more about creating a safe space for yourself, creating more peace for yourself during your grief process. So let's get started and make sure you stay until the end because I am going to be offering you some resources to help you if you are interested in trying decluttering to help your own grief journey. So I personally have had a lot of experience with decluttering. I mentioned in my last video, if you haven't seen it, where I am talking about how I embrace slow and simplified living and why I feel like that's helped my grief journey. I will link it here. I always do that. I'll link it up here for you if when this video is finished, you want to go watch that one to kind of catch up to why I'm including these elements of slow living and simplifying into my grief videos. If you don't know my story, I've got a bunch of videos on it, but essentially I lost my dad and then my stepmom and then my 10-year-old daughter and then my mom in a span of a year and a half. Going through all of that grief actually taught me a lot about decluttering, first with my parents because they were divorced, so separate houses. And first I had to help clean out my dad and stepmom's house and go through all of their stuff. And then with my mom, same thing. We had to clean everything out of my mom's house. And just being overwhelmed as a child, having to figure out what the hell to do with all of their stuff that they hadn't decluttered and gotten rid of was really overwhelming and kind of inspired me to think about, okay, are my kids actually going to want any of this stuff if I would die? If you haven't heard of Swedish death cleaning, you could look that up. It's the idea of thinking about your kids in the future when you die, like what are you going to leave for them? And just kind of ruthlessly getting rid of anything that you don't think that they're going to want you to pass on to them so that they don't have to deal with it, so that your death doesn't become, an excessive burden to them on top of feeling the grief. Having to deal with all of your shit, basically. And then that was my parents. And then when Libby died, that was like a whole different ball game. And it didn't necessarily deal as much with decluttering, except for thinking about what in the heck to do with all of her stuff, because she was only 10 and she had a lot of stuff. And it was a lot of stuff that I wouldn't use because it was little girl stuff. And I really struggled with what to do with her things. That is like a whole separate video. So again, I did it right that time. Today, I will link that video here and I'll actually put it in the description and at the end of this video if you want to go watch that deals specifically with decluttering and what to do with a loved one's belongings who has passed away, because that's kind of its own separate emotional thing. That's not necessarily the kind of decluttering that I'm talking about here. That's like a whole different train wreck kind of thing. So go watch that video after this one if you need tips on that. But anyway, going through all of those different losses and then having a house that at the time I was living in a 5-bedroom house and I had a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuff from just trying to keep up with other people to have the latest and greatest thing. And I've never really been kind of like the hoarder personality. I'm pretty good about getting rid of things periodically. I've moved a lot. So usually when I move, I get rid of a lot of stuff before I move. But I still had those annoying drawers and the annoying closet and just too much of everything. And I guarantee you probably have more than you need. And you probably know that. And maybe like me, the extra that you have, that extra stuff that you don't really need, that clutter is causing more anxiety for you than it needs to. A lot of times, as it was for me, the clutter in my life was not just physical, it was just kind of reflecting the clutter that was going on in my mind and my heart, and reflecting those feelings of the lack of control that I had because of my grief. So I really started to step up my decluttering process when I realized that I was going to be selling my house after my daughter died and moving into my tiny house here. It's kind of, if you're moving into a tiny house from a 5-bedroom house, obviously you're going to have to get rid of a lot of stuff. So it's kind of out of necessity, but it was also a very intentional thing for me. Moving into a tiny house where I knew that I was going to have to restart with very minimal possessions was actually calming for me. It was kind of reflective of me wanting a new start and a refresh on my life that had been turned upside down. I found that by clearing out the clutter, I was making more space and time for my emotions and for my own personal healing. And that's what I'm hoping that this will inspire for you in your own healing. It started as decluttering, but then kind of transformed into this phase of slow living for me, where I was taking the time to not only mindfully go through and sort and select my belongings, but taking time to figure out what was important in my life and what my values were and what my thoughts and feelings were too. So if any of this sounds good to you and you're walking a similar grief path and you are interested in starting your own decluttering journey, I want to give you some simple steps to kind of help you on your way. So my first tip is start slow and start small. Remember, we're embracing slow living, so this is not a race. It doesn't have to be a rush where you are going through your entire house feeling pressured to get everything done right away. We all know when you're grieving, you can get spurts where you feel like getting stuff done, but then you might get exhausted after just a little bit, and that's okay. Take your time. Again, no time limit on this. It is a new type of lifestyle that we're trying to adopt, and that takes a while to get into the swing of something new. Pick an area. It could be the drawer that annoys you all of the time. It could be a bedside table, whatever you want it to be. It can be your seasonal decor if you're just now taking down your seasonal decor from the holidays. Just pick something small and start with that so you don't get overwhelmed. And then if you feel like doing more, you can always add on to that, and that's great. Number 2 kind of has the Marie Kondo vibe, if you've heard of Marie Kondo, and that is hold and reflect. So the different things that you are getting rid of, I recommend physically touching them, getting them out, holding on to them, reflect if they have any meaning for you, if they have any purpose for you, and try to be pretty ruthless with this. Ask yourself, does this item bring me comfort? Does it bring me joy? What am I getting out of this item? Do I actually use this item? And if the answer is no for any of those things, get rid of it. Sometimes letting go of objects can be a step towards healing. But if there are things that you don't want to get rid of, which is absolutely understandable, especially if you are doing this while you are grieving and you have items that remind you of the person that you lost, maybe create a memory box where you just have a box of the items that belong to that person, or it can just be a box of memories in general. And you just sort of put those things out of sight for the moment, but you don't get rid of them so you know that you're not gone. A lot of times, it is terrifying to part with things that belonged to our person, because what if you miss them? What if you want to take them out and look at them again? But I personally found, and let me know in the comments if you feel this way too. I know with the people that I lost, and especially my daughter, the more of her stuff that I had sitting out where I could see it all the time, the worse my grief was. And I'm not saying put everything away, but maybe find a specific area. Like I have a particular area in my house where, I'll try to put a picture of it in here, where I have all of my Libby items. It's basically a shelf that is devoted to her, that has her pictures and has objects that are very special and valuable to me related to Libby. And they're on that shelf. And there are days where I go to that shelf and I take the stuff down and I hold it and I look at it and I cry, obviously. But I found that that is much more healthy for me personally than having her items everywhere, where everywhere I look is a reminder of what I lost. My next tip is embrace the space. And what I mean by that is once you start doing this and once you start clearing items out, notice the space that it's creating and how that makes you feel. If you are anything like me, and research kind of shows it's like this for a lot of people, if you are in a space that is overwhelmed and cluttered and full of stuff, it can make you very anxious, give you a lot of anxiety. And I know that I personally am that way. When I have a space that has clear counters and clean lines and is not overwhelmed with stuff, I feel so much more relaxed and peaceful. And I just love looking at that kind of empty space. It's not empty like, I'm living in an institution somewhere with nothing on the walls. My house is, I think it's very cozy, but it is very minimal and clean and organized. And that in turn makes me feel like I have that control. It's calming for me to have that environment. The next step kind of goes along with the, take it slow thing. And that is have regular check-ins with yourself. So this is not like a declutter once and done. I moved into this tiny house thinking that I wouldn't need anything new. I found that I needed some new things, and I found that I had to get rid of a lot more than I thought I was going to because it just didn't fit and it was just junking up my space. So again, I keep using the word be ruthless, but be kind of ruthless in what you need and what you don't need. Try to be really honest with yourself.
I've got to be ruthless.
And take it in stages where, every couple months, come back to it. And it's going to get easier because you're going to have less and less stuff. And I found, and hopefully you will find the same thing, that when you get into this habit, it saves you a lot of money. One, because you start to look at things when you're out at a store and you like, a decoration. And like me, I was freaking obsessed with throw pillows. Like I had throw pillow issues and like way more than any human needs. And candles. Those are kind of like my two things. And I had so many, and I'd see more, but the more that I decluttered, I'd see things and be like, I don't really need that. And I don't really want that cluttering up my space, or I already have plenty of those and I don't want to take up storage space for anything else. I kind of learned that from Dawn at The Minimal Mom. If you haven't watched her, you should check out her channel. She's awesome. So I learned from Dawn at The Minimal Mom, like you want to have, she calls it inventory. So you want to have just the inventory that you actually need of something and not a bunch of extras and a lot of like just in case items, because inevitably you never really use the just in case items that you're storing. So just get rid of them. The other thing that you can do is a lot of minimalists and decluttering videos talk about the 20 rule, 2020, something like that. Basically, if you can replace the item in 20 minutes or less for $20 or less, then get rid of it. Because you can always get a new one if you need it. But chances are the whole point is that you're probably not going to need it. So hopefully you found these tips helpful, and maybe I've encouraged you to kind of start your own decluttering journey to help clear out your space, clear out your mind, and give you a little more peace in your grief journey. I know in starting this process, and this is really where I started, it brought me a lot closer and further in my journey to that slow living philosophy of just taking things as they come, slowing down, getting out of the rat race, not comparing myself to other people. We have such a tendency to just look at everyone else's Instagram and Facebook feeds, at the new stuff that they're getting and the trips that they're taking. And, having that FOMO, fear of missing out, and just wanting what everyone else has and thinking that we should have it because everyone else does. And if you really look, you don't need that stuff. It's just a consumeristic culture that is telling us that we need these things that we really don't need at all, and that our life can be much more enjoyable and more simple without. I'm going to talk in another video about finances, but that's the other thing with this whole process is that it can really, really help your finances. I know that I spent years trying to keep up with the Joneses, and it hurt my finances. And now that I've chosen to live this way, it is a lot more peaceful and a lot less stressful. And it's just, it works for me. And I'm hoping that maybe it will inspire you to see if it works for you as well. So it's okay if it feels tough at first. Just try to remember that every little item that you are getting rid of can help you contribute more to that sense of peace. I would love to hear your thoughts if you've ever done the, big declutter, how you felt afterwards. If you feel like this is something that you might want to try, let me know in the comments. And as promised, I am going to leave links in the description down below the video for some resources that I created to help you along with your decluttering journey. So there are actually 2 resources that I created, and they are totally free on my website. You can download them. The first one is a checklist. So it's kind of a comprehensive room by room checklist that you can use to go through and just kind of guide you for different areas and helps keep track of, I love being organized and I love checklists. So it just sort of helps you keep track of different areas in your decluttering process. And then the second one is kind of fun. That is a 30-day challenge. So this video is coming out pretty early in the month of January, or whenever you're watching, you can do this, but it's a 30-day challenge to make decluttering a little more fun. And each day of the month has different ideas, a different challenge for an area for you to clean up. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you to click on the links below, download those resources that can help you with your decluttering journey. And yeah, again, if you are looking for specific help with clearing out your loved ones' things after they pass away, I'm going to leave the link to that video at the end of this one and down in the description as well, so you can head there and watch that. As always, I am sending you love and hugs, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Take care.